All right, today we're going to deconstruct an argument. A pretty provocative one, and you've probably seen it floating around online. It really takes aim at the standard public narrative that pops up after certain tragic events. So let's just dive right in and follow the logic piece by piece.
So right off the bat, the whole thing starts with this question. And you can see it's meant to grab your attention, right? It's a hook. The speaker is basically saying, hey, pay attention to this pattern. You might not have noticed it before. And really, this one idea is the bedrock for the entire argument that follows.
Okay, so first things first. The speaker points out what they see is this really predictable script that plays out right after a tragedy. And here's how they break down that pattern. They say a terror attack happens, and almost immediately, boom, the whole public conversation shifts. It moves away from the actual event and instead focuses on defending the peaceful Muslim majority and warning everyone about Islamophobia. This sequence of events, as the speaker sees it, is literally the launching point for everything else they're about to say.
All right, so once they've laid out that observation, the speaker makes a big pivot. This is where the argument really shifts gears, you know? It goes from just noticing something to directly challenging it.
And here it is. This is the core question. It's sharp, it's pointed, and it's definitely designed to provoke a reaction. The speaker takes that narrative about the peaceful majority and kind of flips it on its head. They're asking, okay, so what is this majority doing?
And to give that question more weight, they point out that these attacks keep happening, right? In country after country. They use this as evidence, basically implying that whatever the majority might be doing behind the scenes, it's not working to stop the violence. At its heart, this is a demand for accountability.
So where does all this questioning lead? Well, it builds up to the main claim of the whole argument, an accusation of silence. At this point, the speaker stops asking questions and starts giving what they believe is the answer.
Now this is super important. Look at how silence is defined here. For the speaker, it's not a passive thing. It's not neutral. They argue it's an action that actually protects the people committing the violence. That reframing is everything, because it changes the claim from people are being quiet to people are being complicit.
The speaker also gets ahead of a common counter-argument you hear. They totally reject the idea that these violent events have nothing to do with the ideology or the belief system behind Islam. By pushing back on that, they're insisting that there is a direct link, that you can't just separate the actions from the beliefs.
Okay, so now the argument gets a little more personal. The speaker starts to talk about the dilemma they face when they try to talk about this stuff. They frame it as a clash between what they see with their own eyes and the social labels they get hit with. And this lays out that conflict perfectly. On one side, you have the speaker's perspective, which they call just having common sense or seeing things for what they are. And on the other side, the consequence they say they face for doing that being called a bigot. So they're really highlighting what they see as the high price for speaking their mind. And this question just sums up all that frustration, doesn't it? It's thrown out there to the audience as a challenge. The implication is that this social pressure, this fear of being labeled, is effectively shutting down a conversation that they believe absolutely needs to happen.
But the argument doesn't just stop there, with frustration. It actually escalates into a pretty stark warning about what they see as the real-world consequences. This is where they lay out what's at stake.
Yeah, according to the speaker, we're way past a simple debate about words. They draw a direct line from that whole pattern of communication we talked about at the start, all the way to very real, very tragic results. And here's their cause and effect, broken down. Step 1. A refusal to tell the truth, which for them ties right back to being silenced by that fear of being called a bigot. And step 2, the tragic result, more innocent lives are lost. It's presented as a simple, almost inevitable 1-2 punch.
Then to wrap it all up, the speaker doesn't mince words. They call the whole situation nonsense. There's no gray area left. They end on this very firm, very clear assertion that avoiding what they see as the truth is going to get more people killed, period.
So when you break it all down, this whole argument is really about the power of words and public narratives. It really pushes us to think about that incredibly fine line, that razor's edge, between being careful with our language to avoid stirring up hate and being so quiet that we might enable harm. It kind of leaves you wondering, right? Where do you even draw that line?